Welcome to the 11th episode of Take Me Back, the interviews. And I am really happy today. I'm going to feel like it's a day off for me, actually, because my guest is a close friend of our family. And we've always been able to gab very easily. I'm going to take her back to some things we've talked about before and I've actually written about. Because as far as I'm concerned, she's a key player here in the Valley and has been for some time. So welcome, Gussie Graves. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you again, Kathy.
Now, I want to start with your name. Because it wasn't too long ago when I was writing about the high school, the old high school, which is now condominiums, but you actually went to school there.
Correct.
And your name is Augusta L. Graves. So first I want to know, what does the L stand for?
Lavina.
Lavina. That's an old-fashioned name.
I was named after my mother's sister, whose name was Lavina Augusta.
Oh.
And now I got to be Augusta Lavina, better known now as Gussie.
And there's a story behind the nickname. It has to do with going to school. What happened?
Right. I was a freshman in high school. And Vernon Hart, which was one of the teachers there, said, "That's an awful long name for a little girl like you. So let's just call you Gussie."
And it stuck.
And it stuck.
Did you ever try to get rid of it?
No.
Because until we started actually writing stuff down, I never knew you as anything else than Gussie Graves.
Right. Well, I guess I could have been called Aggie. I was once called Gusta Wind. Some people put it on my new penny loafer shoes. I'd saved up all my money to buy them. And I couldn't get it off.
Gust of wind. Kids are really not all that creative, are they?
Really?
Nobody, I've been writing, and then also we started this show. So this is a different medium. And I've realized as I was driving here today that no one has yet talked and being recorded about what the old high school was like. Now it's condominiums. Mm-hmm. It's called the old high school, so, it gives the impression that only high school students were there.
Yeah.
So talk about when you went to number 9 school,
Number
right?
9, 1 through 8.
1 to 8. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you did enter only for high school.
Correct.
Okay. There are other kids who did a couple grades, like middle school.
Yes.
Do you remember why that was?
Yes, my sister did 7th and 8th with Ella Chapman.
Okay.
But my grandfather, you had to pay tuition for that because there was 8 grades in Fayston. But my grandfather thought she should go to a school that really could teach her something.
Okay. So perhaps the teachers at the high school maybe had a little bit better reputation than trying to run a one-room schoolhouse?
Well, could be. I don't know that. Could be.
Well, let's talk about the little bit of mischief we wrote about. I just loved that story about the bell tower.
Oh, that was when I was in grade school in Fayston. And there was several of us that would always like to, get a little something going. And we had a ringleader, that was a help, right?
Can you tell who it is? Because I've heard from all these different families that you mentioned, and they loved that you include the names.
Oh.
So tell who was there that day.
Gerald Livingston was the ringleader. There was myself and my brother, and
your brother,
Dick Brothers. Yeah, and as I recall, there was maybe a Barnes. There was a couple of other children there anyway. Maybe a Downer.
I think in the written piece it mentions a Viennes.
Viennes, that could be.
Yeah.
That could very well be, yeah. And so at one point in time, I say we, because we're sort of in it together, even though Gerald kind of, was the ringleader, cut down the flag pole. That was not good. Mm-hmm. And then we decided after ringing the bell many times, the bell would turn over, therefore you couldn't ring the bell. So somebody'd have to get up there and flip the bell back over. So then we decided we should take the dong out. What did you?
The clapper.
The clapper.
I looked up the official name after we first talked
Did
about
you?
that. I
Yeah.
didn't know it either, but now I know
Well,
it.
we
It's
called
the
it
clapper.
the clapper. And so we took that out. And of course, that was probably the second or third thing we'd done that wasn't very nice. So,
And, you know, as a teacher, I was a teacher for 40 years, and I'm picturing, wasn't it, was it Mrs. Greenslit who was your teacher?
at that point, yes, it was.
And she was living in Warren.
And she lived in Warren. Mm-hmm.
And she would come over. I mean, the weather wasn't always great.
That's right.
And she came all the way over to Hill number 9 at the bottom. And she's in that classroom. She's got K-8, which is, you know, that would be a nightmare for me to manage that group just because of the different ages. And, you know,
The noise factor.
the noise, right? And here she is. She let you guys out for recess, which was probably a bit of a break for her.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew to come in when they rang the bell,
Correct.
right? Like with an old rope.
Yep.
And that's why sometimes it would flip over and the kids would have to scramble up and turn it over.
Right.
But you had taken the clapper out. So just imagine, she's like, okay, I got to call the kids. What?
I know. I know.
It's so devilish.
Right. Right.
And then there was repercussions. You talked about the superintendent coming.
Yes, she finally called the superintendent or got hold of, I don't know. There wasn't a phone at school, so whether she had one at home or I don't know.
Yeah.
And he came over and he gave us a lecture. And he told us that we probably had the most disobedient students in his district. And of course, you know what?
I'm starting to laugh, but that must have been a little scary as a kid.
I don't even know if we cared. I mean, that's how kids get, you know.
Yeah.
They, oh, well, you know, just another, you know, lecture. And your parents never knew about it.
Well, that came up, and that was really interesting. Is you were speculating, did anybody have a phone?
The only one that I can remember that might have had a phone was Vassar's.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't one at school. The janitor across the street, Mrs. Moulton,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a phone. So, you know, and we walked to school.
You just bridged that for me, too. I forgot. That would have been the Moulton's house, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
What year are we talking about?
Well, 36, 42. I started school in 42, so it had to be 45, 46, maybe something like that.
And this is before any kind of development. There's no Mad River Glen. There's no Sugar Bush. This is country. Right?
Country, yep. We'd go skiing the Downers. John and Grace Downer owned where, there's a bookkeeping service right there in that house now. And we'd go down and ski on that slope on the recess or lunch hour. And there was nothing around.
I just want to introduce the voice. It was like a voice from God asking a question. This is our producer, Tony, and I love it when he asks questions because I think it adds so much. So just so you know,
Oh,
Tony Italiano. who's
Okay, Tony.
Director of this station, producer, does it all.
And you know, Tony used to paint my house.
He told me that.
Yes, he said, remember all that wallpaper? So I know he got the right house.
You did when I was at your house last time. You do have a lot of wallpaper. You love that pattern. It must be the texture of it.
Well, you know, I've sold my house.
Yeah, you're with Deb now.
And I was in it just Monday. Well, no, yesterday, Wednesday. And they've done a beautiful job.
They redid the whole thing? That's what they do now.
Yeah.
Even though it's in perfect shape.
It should be up into the 21st century, shouldn't it?
Yeah. So you're talking about walking down the hills, and let's just put that into perspective. This show is a TV show, but it also will be a radio show. So I try to figure out how to, do both, right?
Right, yeah.
We're walking from the GMVS campus,
Right.
and that was your farm,
Mm-hmm.
and the farmhouse still exists.
Yes, in a different part of the property, they took it down and, well, moved it, I should say, to another.
So right now, it's just across the parking lot from the sports center that was built not too long ago.
Yes.
Where was it originally?
Right where the main office is now, right on the road.
So by the Hobart building.
Yes.
It would have been
Right
there.
Right, yep.
And I love the story you tell about the day you were born.
Oh, yes. Well, 3 pigs was better than not getting paid at all, I guess.
And who are we talking about?
Dr. Shaw, which was Elmer Mehuron's father-in-law, I believe.
Yes.
So I oftentimes wonder if those pigs went to Elmer, because I don't think a doctor would be
Interested in butchering?
right.
Yeah, so Dr. Carlos Shaw was my husband's great-grandfather.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And he was a town doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And you said he walked up to your house.
Like in August, the road was probably fine.
Yeah.
But I can remember seeing him coming with his satchel, walking up. The road is a whole lot different now. But there was a big butternut tree there, and you could see him coming up over that little rise, and you knew he was going to get better right away.
And when you told me, and Gussie, we were out on her front porch when she was telling me this story, and then she said, and he got paid in pigs, 3 of them. I don't think I ever laughed so hard, just the image of it.
I know.
But you're right, it probably went to Elmer to butcher. Because
Well,
they
I'm
did
just,
that.
Thinking common sense-wise.
And there's another story, but I know these stories because they go into my articles and the books, the Take Me Back books.
Right.
In the Mehuron's book, this was a book, just a booklet, let's call it, that we did for Irene and Tommy for the 75th anniversary.
Yes.
And you used to work at the old Mehurons.
I did.
Can you tell what it was like? How were you? Because you were 14 when you went to work for Mad
River. Yeah.
How old would you have been at Mehurons?
I had actually worked at Mad River, and Deb was born in May of '57, and I kind of needed to get back to work. So I went down, and Elmer gave me a job, and he taught me several good lessons about life. Very easy to work for, but of course, like everybody else, it came into the fall of the year, and I had a chance to go back to Mad River, which paid more money. You had to work different hours and many days a week, but that wasn't really my issue. I didn't care how much I worked. So I went to Elmer and asked if I might get a raise to bring me up to what Mad River would pay me. Now, I don't think Mad River paid but 25 or 30 cents maybe an hour then.
30 cents an hour.
Would be tops, yeah. And Elmer said, boy, I'd like to, but I really can't. And I said, well, maybe you wouldn't mind then if I went to work back at Mad River. He said, no, if you'd like to do that, you should do it. But he was always so thoughtful and so nice.
I never knew him. I wish I had.
You should have.
I know my husband thought the world of him.
Yeah. And Tex, in the summertime when he wasn't working at Mad River, had the restaurant down, well, I don't know, baked beans were there at one time, And then I think Chamber of Commerce might have been
Right.
there.
It's
But-
at the bottom of the old hotel. It's on Bridge Street. Just for the
Yep.
for the listeners.
Yep. And that was the first restaurant in town, too, I believe.
The dugout.
Yeah, Dugout, yeah.
You taught me that because I didn't know that.
And so I'd work for Tex, waiting table, because I had my last class in the morning was at 11:30. I didn't have to go back to class until 1:30. So I could pop down there, have my lunch, wait table, and, kind of make a few bucks. And I remember going to Elmer one of those days when I was working there in the fall and saying, Elmer, see, you have a nice turkey pan there for sale. I wonder if I could buy that for my mom. And I can pay you when I get paid from Tex. And he said, I really can't do that. He said, you're not 18 years old, and you can't charge anything to anybody less than 18.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
But go ahead and take it and pay me when you get your paycheck. So that's how I got that. So he was a really nice guy.
Well, but he trusted you too.
Yeah.
There was a lot of integrity in you that
Yeah.
he recognized.
So-
Before we leave the Mehurons, you told a story a while ago about somebody calling and ordering a chicken.
Yes. There was a lady, now you want to remember, Mehuron, now it's just becoming back to be vogue, I guess, but Mehurons always had delivery. You could call down, order your groceries, and they'd deliver it.
And Max Shaw would
And
do
Mac,
that?
yep, and Max.
I've learned a lot, Gussie.
Yeah, and so, where was I going with this?
The chicken.
Oh, the chicken. So this lady from Warren called in. She was a regular customer when we delivered, and she needed to have a chicken. And she said she got a ride down there, and she needed to pick it up. Well, the meat guy wasn't in. Oh, he lived up in Warren. What was his name?
This was before Delbert.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that name.
Yeah, I could probably remember it in a few minutes. Anyway, I said, oh, the meat guy isn't in, but let me see what I can do. So I went down to the meat department, pulled out one of those chickens. They had just been brought in, so, they hadn't been drawn,
What does that mean, John?
taken out the innards.
But the feathers were gone? But,
Oh, yeah, feathers.
But the insides were
yeah,
still there.
the feathers were all gone, but you had to do the dressing of them. So I'm down there cutting them, and Elmer comes along, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, the lady's waiting for her chicken. She ordered it, but it wasn't ready, so I thought I would get it prepared. He didn't know that this was secondhand to me because my gram had lots of chickens,
Right.
and we ate lots of chicken. So that was, yeah. He didn't say anything to me, but I think he gave me the idea I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, he was
So I didn't do it again.
surprised. So tell me something. I have to remind everybody that I did not grow up in Waitsfield. I'm a Jersey girl. I'm an Irish Catholic Jersey girl. So I don't know. Like in my childhood, I never saw live animals. How do you get rid of the feathers?
The feathers?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about chicken feathers for sure, but they do feather pillows right now today.
But how do you get them off the animal?
Hot water. You dunk them into boiling hot water, and boy, they come right off.
Really?
Yeah.
And then you just pull it right out?
Yep.
Interesting. I'll have to see if I can find a video of that. I'm interested.
Well, you should let me know years ago.
So we're going to leave Mehurons for a minute
Okay.
because I think of all the stories that I've heard about when Mad River started, you didn't even know you were so pivotal. You were like in the middle of everything. And it started when you were 14, right?
Yep.
So you went up there. Tell us what happened.
Oh, first of all, I was playing basketball at the high school, And we had practices, I don't know, on Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't know what nights. But anyway, Mad River had let it known that they were hiring people for the mountain and for the kitchen. And I can't remember that manager's name now. I've been trying to think about it. But anyway, I would walk from now Green Mountain Valley School down to the old church. And that's where we played basketball.
Mm-hmm. The old church being the building across the street, up across Route 100?
Yes, as you're going north, it'd be on your left.
Okay. Like where V's quilt shop used to be.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty big open space at the time.
Right. And so I thought, wow, this manager lives right across, right through the bridge, like the brick house on the right. I guess I've got time. I'm going to go over there, knock on his door, and find out if I can get a job. So I did. And he opened up the door and he said, "And what do you want, young lady?" Oh, all of a sudden I started shivering. I said, "Oh, I want a job at Mad River. I heard you were looking for help." He said, "They're probably in the kitchen. You should talk to Tex Thompson." So that's how I got the job.
So did Tex have the restaurant under the hotel at that time?
I don't believe he did at that time. But it was, he may have, because I was in high school.
Yeah.
So he probably did.
And
yes.
Tex was up on Old County Road.
That's right. He's always lived there, I believe.
Yeah.
And I used to...
So you marched up there and talked to him?
Well, actually, in the summertime, he worked at Bonnet's Garage.
Oh, which doesn't exist anymore.
Right. But I used to have to take my car in there once in a while and get it tuned up. And they would tinker on it for me.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to know Tex. So
you go up, they did hire you,
Yep.
not realizing that you were only 14.
Yeah, I was just under 14 because you had to be 14 to get to be able to work. I think that was it.
And as I remember, the way they found out or realized it was they had to help you get a Social Security card.
That's correct.
And you weren't old enough yet.
Yeah, right.
So, but they must have liked you because they kept you.
Yeah, right.
But I was fascinated by the sequence because you were a worker. You were willing to work.
Right.
You went up there to cook and then take us through the different things that you wound up, the different opportunities that came your way.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I first started, I filled salt and pepper shakers on the table. And then I made some sandwiches, and I got to where I sometimes did some grill work, but I mostly got into the bakery. And from the bakery, I would go, after I got done baking, get myself cleaned up a little bit and go in the bar and bartend.
But they would let you bartend? You were barely legal.
I know. I didn't quite bartend then. I just waited on the customers, take them drinks and stuff. That didn't seem to be a problem. But then I got to where after I was old, I don't know, I sure wasn't 18, but yes, I did bartend. So maybe it was legal, maybe it wasn't.
Where were you when you overheard someone talking about needing a house cleaner?
Right. One afternoon, Sunday afternoon, this lady came in and she said to Tex, "You don't know anybody that cleans houses. I've got guests coming and I need to get my chalet cleaned." And my ears perked up. My mother had taught us how to do that. And I waved my hands and he said, "There you go, right there."
Were you up at the mountain or were you at the dugout?
No, I was at the mountain.
Okay.
I was at the mountain. Yep.
I like to get these visuals straight.
I understand. Yeah.
So when I moved here in '86, you were widely known as a very successful businesswoman. I had no idea, until we actually started taking us back, right? I had no idea what that would have been like. So you get this notion that you can clean houses, but you built that into something pretty fast.
I did, yeah. We had, at one time, I had some girls that worked for me too. And at one time, uh, don't get me wrong, we didn't do it every week, but we did it year round, either spring, summer, fall, and some really regulars. To about 80 houses at one time.
80.
80 houses,
And-
chalets, and we went down as far as the other end of Moortown.
So it was you and two other?
Sometimes I had 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So how many hours a week were you working?
Well, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
How many hours it took, I don't know.
And you had, at that point, you had young children, didn't you?
Yes, but God forbid I had my mother.
Oh. Thank God for the grandmas,
Yep. You got that right.
right?
Yep.
I honestly think that's actually what, I don't, I know not everybody likes the word God, but I do. I think that's what God intended, is that when we're still young enough to work, it's the grandma who oversees everything.
Yep. That's right. And she did a good job.
That's wonderful. Well, as we talked about this before, as I'm thinking about it, as a math teacher, I'm thinking, okay, it's great. You had all these jobs and you had a couple employees, but how on earth did you learn how to manage the books and the taxes?
Well, first of all, I think that I just knew a little bit about you had to pay an estimate on money that you earned.
Mm-hmm.
I had tax taken out of me at Mad River all the time. And it was a little more simple than it is now. And so I sort of just got into it. And, they needed W-2 forms. And so you just have yourself a little sheet of paper and do what you have to do. Yep.
I know there was no money to go to college.
No.
So where would you go for advice? Did you buy books? Was there somebody who mentored you?
Without a doubt. But Ron Graves, my husband,
Yeah.
did go to college, Champlain College, and he had a lot of knowledge about it. So I'm sure I reaped a lot of that from him.
Yeah. So he could advise you, and then you could go get the forms or whatever you needed.
In whatever I needed, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so now you got this successful cleaning business.
Yep.
Your mom's helping out with the children.
Yep.
I never really did understand how you made the leap to real estate.
Well, I guess that first of all, I really believe my brother and my husband didn't like that idea.
That you were in real estate?
There was a stigma about cleaning houses.
Okay.
Not for me, but for them. And we also did a development. And so through them kind of saying, well, we're going to do this, and well, you don't have to do that. Well, if you're going to earn money, you got to do something, right?
But you're saying they didn't like the notion that maybe some out, people from away, as Ron Graves taught me that term, from away. I love it.
Right.
His father would say that.
Yeah.
They might view you as the maid, and they didn't like it. Your brother
Correct.
and your husband.
Correct. But we, believe me, I knew how to use a shovel, and that was okay.
So they were picking and choosing the things that were acceptable.
So anyway, we developed what is now Glenview, which was my dad's property.
Glenview, where my son lives. Bruce lives on Glenview.
That was part of my dad's property.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so when my dad passed away, my mom had nothing. So Dick and Betsy, myself and Ron, bought the property from my mom and paid her as we sold the lots. Now, along with selling the lots came a building, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Brothers Building got the building.
No kidding.
So all of that Glenview property was sold and built by Brothers Building and their spouses.
Well, I I advised my son. I said, you can't lose money in this neighborhood. Now, I had no idea of the connection with you. But the view is beautiful. And the way that the houses were positioned within the neighborhood, I think, is just gorgeous.
It came out quite well.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So I didn't get that. So that's where Brothers Building came from.
Yep. And Ron helped Dick to set that business up
Yeah.
when we lived on Route 17. I would be doing laundry and mangling, getting ready for my next day's work, and they would be doing the accounting work for Brothers Building.
Yeah.
That's where the Brothers Building's office was.
Okay, so it makes sense to me now more. You're watching the buildings go up. You're seeing the potential. There's more people coming to town.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you thought to yourself, because look, you had to be pretty smart to have made it that far, right? Really on your own. Let's be honest. I mean, you just decided to do something and you made it happen. So we go from the building now. You probably thought to yourself, well, I can be a real estate agent.
Well,
But what did it take to get there?
Well, I couldn't just go and take my tests to become a salesperson unless I had a broker that would sponsor me. That was a state regulation.
Okay.
So Ron said, okay, I don't want to get in real estate, but I'll take the test and I'll become the broker, because he had quite a lot of knowledge about building. And then I'll employ you, and then you can go after your broker's license when you can. And there was a period of time. Now I think you've got to have X amount of sales, but that wasn't true back then. It was a number of years, maybe a year, 2 years or something, and then you could apply for your brokers, so you could be on your own. And that's what I did.
And you did it.
And I did it.
And the business, I mean, but when I moved here, that business was booming.
Yeah. My first office was on Route 17,
Yeah.
right where I lived. And then I rented from Brothers Building, where the Valley Reporter just moved out of. What's in there now, if anything?
The old Valley Reporter space?
Right.
I assumed Brothers took over the whole floor.
Thing. Did
I
they?
don't know. I haven't been in.
I haven't either. But that's where my first office was, away from my house.
Where were you? Were you living on 17?
Right, almost across, but west of number 9 school.
Okay.
So, ranch.
So not
House.
far from the Hideaway. We lived in that little house at the Hideaway, right? With my boys.
Right. Yep.
Not far.
Yep.
And owning the Hideaway early on and knowing Sewell and Arthur Williams, Sewell started Ula Lodge, and
Yep.
it became the Snuggery and then the Hideaway. But he was so generous about telling stories and leaving us photographs and so forth. So
Was he? Yeah.
your early work at Mad River Glen really intrigued me, because I knew there weren't many inns.
No, not at all.
Was it so different on the weekends? I'm picturing people just showing up.
Oh, people would show up. When we lived on Route 17, this is really not fibbing one bit. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, unless you were working and would take you to 5 or 6 o'clock, but between 3 and 5 o'clock, the traffic was backed up from Route 100 and 17 all the way back to our house.
Wow.
And that's how bad it was.
Just
It was
people getting there, arriving.
Or going off from the mountain Sunday night, going home.
Right.
Now, when they came up Friday night, it was all hours of the night, so who would care?
Yeah.
But going home, starting at 3 o'clock, you'd better be in your house ready to stay for at least 3 hours.
These images are what really kill me.
Yeah.
Something just popped in my head. So I have an idea, and I wasn't here, but I have an idea what year I think really things started to really change in the valley. If you had to pick a year, what would it be?
Well, I think that probably Sugar Bush I would have to say Sugar Bush. And that was, all the glitter and everything that comes with it. And I think we can say that Damon Gadd is the person that really spurred this valley on.
Now, Damon wound up buying the Hideaway from Arthur and then opened Sugar Bush, just for people that don't know.
Yeah.
And it was still the Ula Lodge, I think, when he had it. But I think you're right. I mean, just doing research, it seems like 63, this was a whole new concept, this glamour,
Right.
mascara mountain, luxury.
Absolutely. Where's the common man?
Right.
Now, the common man is where my dad used to board his horses when we worked that
Is that
mountainside.
true?
When we worked that mountainside logging. Dick and I, Dad, yeah.
So it was, I thought it was a barn that had been moved, but it was a barn that was there.
Oh, yeah. Then the barn burned down, and they rebuilt a barn there.
So they just, brought a more structure in after the fire.
Right.
I know it was Orsini's, right? And Orsini's was quite a famous restaurant in New York.
That was Orsini's before it was a common man, right?
Before Michael had it, yeah.
Right, yes, yeah.
So all these things are blowing my mind.
And I think we can only thank Damon Gadd for bringing all of this, if you will, wealth to the valley.
So that was 63, I think. And the year that I come across all the time as pivotal is 65. Because that's when really the first of the ski bums were arriving. Mm-hmm. They were living here and working here in the winter just for the chance to ski. And then the architects came to Warren. To Prickly Mountain.
What year did Mehurons buy their spot at the Village Square? They moved from Bridge Street up to...
It was full-blown going by 69, but I think they bought the property in 66.
Yep. And, I mean, they couldn't even survive in that little store down there in the mid-60s, right?
All they had, the folks, it's the Artisans Gallery now.
Yeah.
And it was built, it was the long building, wasn't it, when it was built? But it was meant to be a store on the first story, and then family lived above. That's what you used it for. But there wasn't enough room, there wasn't enough parking.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And my understanding is somebody, who did Brothers build Village Square Shopping Center?
No, but I know don't remember the man's name, but he was a not a very big guy, but he was one awful worker. And the rumor was he wanted to rent Elmer Mehuron. And Elmer said, no, I buy it or I don't go up there.
This is interesting because Irene told me that the builder came to them and said, we know you don't have enough room. And that for whatever reason they said no, so they're talking about renting. I believe Elmer was pretty crafty. Good on him.
Yeah.
But the man sort of threatened them and said, if you don't build a bigger Mehurons, somebody else is going to take that space. So now they were facing the competition.
Yep.
Right? And it was, they had to make the move.
Yeah. But nobody could compete at that point in time with Elmer, because Elmer, you could go and just pick up your groceries and charge them. Nobody else is going to do that.
Right.
So he did have that in his pocket. I know people that still charge there.
I know. They do. If you had an original charge account, this is folks, children before the credit cards. I mean, not everybody had a credit card in the 80s. It wasn't
not at all
that common. So they had their own charge accounts, and Irene ran them. My beloved mother-in-law, she'd take care of all those bills. But some people still maintain it as a service that they enjoy.
But just think back into Elmer was so gracious. I mean, I know my father had a big mill there because I worked there and I saw it. And, we weren't the only ones. But you know what? He never hassled you unless he caught you going out of town buying stuff and booze. Then you might get reprimanded.
But if it was just food,
It was okay.
he was on your side.
Yep.
I hear it brings tears to my eyes, really.
Yeah.
So, and I believe it's true because he had access to groceries and he was not going to turn his neighbors away.
And especially when he got 3 pigs. You can't beat that.
I wonder what 3 pigs were worth in that day.
How many other cows and chickens did he get?
It's true. Tommy has memories of, because Tommy used to be down in the basement sorting eggs and turning the wheels of cheese, and they would bring the livestock right in the big door, back by where the sweet spot is now. They'd open those double doors and bring the livestock in and butcher them somewhere down there.
Sure, I sold property for the guy that did their slaughtering.
Really?
Yep, and we used to talk about that. He and his wife and I wished I could remember his name. And I sold some nice property up there.
Yeah. Well, I'm checking the time because we have a limit.
Okay.
Tommy said to me one time that the way many people were able to accumulate some wealth to take care of themselves and to retire and so forth was land. Do you agree with that? Because you were talking about your farm was GMVS and then up that hill.
My grandmother and grandfather owned the house I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And they owned that whole flat from, where Deb lived on.
Yeah.
Okay. They owned from where my mother lived, then Green Mountain Valley School, and then all the way to where Deb lived on Moulton Road.
Right.
Plus the other side of the road up quite a ways. And my father never owned a house when we were kids.
Right.
But he did buy the land from, I think it was Pierce, a guy named Pierce. As you go up by the Knoll Farm, as you go past the Knoll Farm, on the left and on the right. And it went all the way to just about where my house was before I sold it a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's a lot of land.
that was called Glenview, and that's what Dick and Ron and Betsy and I developed.
My son Bruce is very interested in the Take Me Back project and
Cool.
what
Good.
we're going to do with it, right? And so, one of my issues is historic markers. I think we can do a much better job showcasing the history of our valley. But what he particularly wants is the historic families' farms. He wants them marked because, the valley's growing, we need housing, a lot's going to change. And I think it's a great idea.
That'd be a great idea. Little like the kiosk things.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly. Just honor the family that once owned this land.
Yeah.
So you're up on the hill, and it's no secret Randy Graves and Alice and I are all friends.
Yeah, right.
Randy's family was on the Common Road.
Right.
And I believe his uncle too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now how are you two related? You're his aunt, correct?
I would be, yes, in-law, yep.
So Bover was?
Ron's brother.
Okay. So
Right.
they just, as young men, they wound up buying different farms or leasing?
No, I think Bover got the farm that Ron grew. Well,
He got the family farm.
He got, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't really know how many acres there, but Shinny did own the next farm up, and I don't know how many acres that were there. But Bover sold the lower part of his farm to Howard Martin and, forget the other guy's name. But anyway, so that's where he made some money. So I'm a big believer in real estate.
Yeah.
because I remember buying 100 acres from an old logger who happened to know through my dad up in North Facein, up on Sharpshooters Road,
Oh, that's way up there.
way up there, about 80 or 100 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it because I like land.
Yeah.
Ended up selling it to a fellow who is just, I think he's just keeping it open for himself. He's got a lovely home there.
Right.
And then I remember buying something off from Finn Basin Road that belonged to a guy who used to park cars at Mad River.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Dick built it. I mean, they can take almost anything away from you that you have today except your home and your land. And when I don't mean taking it for default, I mean it's there. It grows in value. You can't make no more of it.
Right. I'm a big believer in real estate too.
Are you really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
You hang on to stuff and fix it up a little bit every year, and
oh yeah.
you're going to do okay.
Absolutely.
So, with a few minutes left, I want to ask you something. Just indulge me. The listeners, the viewers, you probably don't know that Gussie and my mother-in-law traveled together a lot. How many trips do you think you took?
Oh boy.
A dozen, probably.
At least.
All over the world. Were you
Yeah.
on the Africa trip?
Yeah. Oh yes. As a matter of fact, yes.
So, out of all of them, which was the most spectacular? Because you went to some spectacular places.
We did. No, I have to tell you, Kenya, Africa,
Really?
was the best. Irene and I would sit on a little porch, and the little deer would run right by you and all over around, and oh, it was beautiful. It was just beautiful.
When she brought, I bought her a camera before you guys went, and Thomas taught her how when she got home, we were going to take the camera and hook it up to the TV, right?
Yeah.
Because that was, I think, probably our first big screen TV.
Yeah.
And he got the cords all set, and she went off. Off you went to Africa, and she came home, and I was stunned. It was like it was a Spielberg movie. The animals were so close to you.
Oh yeah, I got pictures of them. I just showed my kids them the other day. And Ron and Freddie went to Africa here a year ago.
Yeah.
And boy, I'll tell you, I think my pictures are as good as theirs.
Was there, am I wrong? There was one place you stayed that like had a glass bottom so you could see the animals move below you?
Well, I remember them being in the water, and they'd say, "Don't get near the water because they will come out after you."
What kind of animals are we talking about? So you mentioned a deer. What else did you see?
Oh, elephants. I
Wow.
mean, zebras. Oh my gosh. We saw the 5 big ones, and a lot of groups don't see all 5.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see, the elephant, water buffalo, cheetah, lion. One more. I don't remember it.
Hippopotamus, maybe?
Hippo.
I'm just guessing. I've never been to
Well, we
Africa.
saw hippopotamus, though.
You did?
Oh, yeah. And zebras, like bunches of them. I mean, it
That must
was
just
like,
been unreal.
oh, it was. It was. And go out and you'd actually see lions attack, yeah, and take them down and chew them up.
Was there any point where you were afraid?
I don't think so. No. We trusted the driver, I guess.
I think Irene told me that what you were driving in, it wasn't a Jeep, but it was something Jeep-ish. So you were fairly out in the open.
Yeah. I called it an old. It wasn't a VW bus, but it was like that. But it was an open top.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, I'm
Yeah,
glad you
it was-
did
it was-
it. Aren't
yeah.
you glad you did it?
Oh, I wouldn't give it up for nothing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't give it up for nothing.
Because it was a, I don't know, a decade or so that you two were doing a trip a year, a major trip a
Yep,
year.
we were.
So you saw the world.
We saw, yeah. You know, everybody should do it. You should do it when you're young enough, though, so that you can really
Enjoy it.
understand it. Like I'm not getting into politics. I'm just using it as an example.
Mm-hmm.
But I think of Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
Russia. We were St. Petersburg. We were right there and boated all around that. And so when I look at this and I look at my map, we were right there.
Yeah.
How could you beat that?
And that
It's-
particular trip, Irene was the only one of 6 who was born in the United States. Her parents were from Poland, and her brothers and sisters were born in Poland.
Yeah,
And that particular trip meant the world to her.
yeah. We kidded a little bit about that, but it was a great trip.
Beautiful.
It was a great trip.
Well, born on a farm in Baston,
I
and
know.
you wind up traveling the world.
I know.
What
it
a
was
journey
great.
you have
Right.
had.
The-
Oh, I should say happy
we're-
birthday.
Oh, yes, and we're probably getting along toward the end. Do you think that we should talk about the sign at Arthur's or anything like that?
Oh, gosh. Yes,
uh,
what did we do with it?
um,
Did you stick it back in your purse?
Probably did.
This is a favorite story. I'll tell it from the innocent bystander, and the Gussie's going to tell us how it happened. So when we were living at the Hideaway in the little house, that little house was built in 1864, and my Bruce was at Facein School. Johnny was in the baby seat, but Bruce could read, so I don't know. He was first or second grade, and we're going, up German Flats, make that turn, and there's a big sign that says McDonald's. Let's see, Tony, can you zero in on that? And we believed it. I mean, didn't even think about the fact it was April Fool's Day. We believed there was going to be a McDonald's right on that corner. So, Gussie, tell us how that happened.
Okay. I was on the board planning commission with Arthur Williams, and so we'd review our regulations periodically, maybe once a year. Well, it came that about the time that Fred Spencer and I were also doing listing for the town. And so someone says to Arthur, oh, well, maybe it's time to have a McDonald's. And Arthur says, no way in this valley we don't need a McDonald's. So I'm listening to all of the scuttlebutt at the meeting. So I go back to working with Fred. I said, Fred, what would be nice if we made a big sign that said McDonald's coming soon and put it on Arthur's fence near his horse barn. Oh, Fred said, that'd be a great idea. I said, well, how do we get to do this? And Fred, very creative guy, if anybody knows him, he can do about anything. He said, just leave it up to me, I'll get the sign made. So, as this picture just shows, it's a pretty nice sign. And
A very believable sign.
a very believable sign. And so Fred called me one night and he said, well, I'm going to go down and put that sign up down at Arthur's barn. I said, can I help you? He said, no. He said, the boys will help me. So now I'm getting a little bit nervous, because I'm thinking, oh, they don't know about it. Arthur goes down, and this sign is a good-looking sign. And so I called up Hannah. I said, that
was
be
Arthur's wife, Hannah.
Arthur's wife. And when I told her, she just busted out laughing. She said, good for Arthur. So anyway, so the next morning when Arthur went down to the barn, he saw it, and I guess he was really, I don't know, good humor, bad humor. I wasn't there. But some people stopped by and gave Arthur the business because, Arthur, you're not going to allow this, are you? And Arthur, of course, Arthur was really against it, but he didn't want to make any big, anyway. So
Arthur was, absolutely adamant that this valley would be pristine.
Exactly.
He did not want a McDonald's like Stowe. what Gussie, she wasn't, because you were in a different place in the valley then. The whole Facein school was a buzz. They couldn't believe there's a McDonald's coming. And then I went down to Mehuron's, which I did every morning. Of course, everybody, it was the talk of the town for at least 24 hours until it was made clear that it was a joke. And people remembered it was April Fool's Day.
So, right. And so anyway, I knew I had this picture, but I couldn't remember how I got it. But I just remember I had it. I just found it like 2 weeks ago when I was packing up my stuff. And Arthur, must be John Williams, Arthur's son, must have taken this picture because at Christmas I got this card and it says, "Ho, ho, ho, open for Christmas, Arthur and Hannah." So, you know.
We love it.
And
what a perfect way to close out episode 11 of Take Me Back.
Oh.
Gussie, as always, it's just a delight to be with you.
Well, and you bring out the best you can in people.
Oh, I try. I try very hard. Hey, if you know someone that I don't know who really should be interviewed, please let us know. It's so easy to find me. We're in the book. Mary Kathleen Mehuron is my website. My email will come right up. But just let me know. People are reaching out, and I really appreciate it. Because even though it's a little town, we don't know everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks for coming.